Are we living in a simulation? Why or why not?
Yeah, we might be living in a simulation, I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure every single person who like thinks about the existence of our existence sooner or later was thinking about simulation, that we are actually living in a simulation. All these questions: if the tree falls in the forest, does it make sound or not? Yeah. Well, I mean, it can be a very long philosophical conversation, but I'll try to make a joke, and kind of be there, because I remember we were working with teenage students, and one day in our movie club we wanted to show them the movie Matrix, which for my generation was an eye-opening experience, and not only the graphics but in general the idea. I don't know. I mean, I watched it when I was probably a teenager. Yes, the pills. And I don't know. I don't remember if there was like a first movie which kind of get me to this idea if we're living in a simulation or not. But it definitely was around that time when I was thinking about this stuff. And when we showed it to our kids, they were like, "Oh, that's not real. Not impressive. I don't think so. That's like BS."
Yeah.
And then that time I realized that Matrix is probably just trying to fix the glitch, and the new generation, they already have a better, the better code. They don't buy this because the Matrix is trying to protect itself from destruction. So
well, and I know Elon Musk has talked a lot about this as well, and he obviously has a well thought out take on most things. But it's kind of a question of, do you think that humans living in a simulation is an inevitability? Because if you believe that it's an inevitability, that eventually we'll get to the point where, we're in pods, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where we're working jobs in virtual worlds, and, in the real world, we live in 10 by 10 square foot apartments and have robots shoveling goop in our mouth to keep us alive, but our entire existence mentally is in this non-existent plane. And if you see that as, some people see that as more inevitable than others. And if you're in the camp that, depending on how inevitable you see that as, and I'm mixed. I see it as a possibility, but I also see a variety of ways in which it could be, I guess, stopped before it would get to that terminal point of us completely abandoning the actual physical world itself. But if you believe that it's an inevitability, then mathematically speaking, the odds of us already having hit that point are much greater than the odds of us having not hit that point yet. Because if you think of all of human history as a measurement time t, so there's the original time t where the world actually existed, and then there's an hypothetically infinite number of time t's after that where it's a simulation recreation of all of time. So you have one t possibility that we're in reality, and t plus however time iterations have gone by, chances that it's a simulation. So even if we are in round one, if you will, round one of simulation, it's 50%, if you will. Of course, these being things that are completely untangible to actually have true false knowledge of. But mathematically speaking, if you break it down that way and see it as an inevitability that at a certain point in human history, we hit that point, and then it would basically act as a restart, if you will. And then mathematically speaking, the more restarts we go through, the higher chance it is that, mathematically, it's kind of basing its probabilities off of its own existence. But since that's the argument we're making anyway, I'll go ahead and make that logical leap.
Yeah, well, I don't know. After reading the book of called Black Swans, I don't know if you read it, but you obviously are familiar with the concept. Nassim, help me out here. Nassim, I forgot his surname, but Nassim Taleb, yes, Nassim Taleb with Black Swans. Yeah, so he's talking about that probabilities are basically, you never know. Basically, you can apply math as much as you want, but then there is a black swan which can be accounted for. But
I think I think there's the English version of that is known as the butterfly effect.
Not quite. Black Swan is something which you can. It's actually in English, and I listened it in English. And Black Swan is just a very, very, very rare occasion. Butterfly effect is when you do something small and then it has effect, like it grows over time, and But
That's kind of what it is. The cultural zeitgeist understanding of butterfly effect is actually a little bit off of its actuality. Because I was speaking with him in terms of, are you familiar with the term determinism? This
not
idea
quite,
that
no.
basically the idea that there's no such thing as free will, and that everything is predetermined based on, like, genetics and all that stuff. You could basically predict anything that's going to happen. It's inevitable. But the butterfly effect is that you can never purely calculate it mathematically, because there'll always be something going on that escapes your calculation.
Yeah, it's similar to chaos theory, kind of, because there's too many inputs. Yeah, okay. But Black Swan is still a different thing, and I recommend you reading this book if you haven't yet. Getting back to the inevitability of us living in a tiny little blocks, and then us, like our mind, living in a simulation. I think that we are definitely moving into that direction, because the population is growing in a geometrical progression, and the human's mind can't really appreciate the geometrical progression. The number is going to grow much quicker than it seems, so the time which took us to get from 1 billion people living to 7 billion people living, it was like, I don't know, 100 years, let's say, from the top of my head. But for us to double 7 billion to like 14 is going to take, I don't know, but nothing compared to the 100 years. Pretty close. It's exponential. It's So there won't be simply enough space for us to leave. And there's another book from Russian author that's called Future, and he exactly explains this kind of environment. So, but getting back to the black swans, we never know. There might be a world war or a pandemic of deadly virus or whatever, which will basically take us back a few hundreds of years in an amount of population or technology or something. So I don't know how inevitable we are getting there, but everything can happen basically. And I'm saying, but if nothing happens, then I guess we'll be there pretty soon. Maybe you and I, when we'll be old, if we make it there, we'll be already our grandkids, instead of giving us to a nursing home, will just plug us into the matrix and let us rot in the corner. And so,
well, I guess it kind of, I know you got to go soon, so I will kind of, but branching off kind of what you were discussing about the reasons why it might come about, I guess the question to be posed is, so we talk about this inevitable future of people living basically entirely in a virtual world. Is that inherently a bad thing? Can humans live a fulfilling life purely in the mental? Does actual existence of things, I don't know. What do you think? Would be inherently a bad thing? I don't think anyone is going to argue that it'd be inherently a better thing. I think because of what we talked about, the impossibility of mathematically calculating reality, you end up with, in my opinion, a reality that would be, you can never fully simulate reality. So realness will always be just that much realer, for lack of better words. So I don't think anyone's going to argue that it's inherently better that we all be living in a mental, but do you think it's inherently worse, or could it be maybe a mixed bag of good, bad?
Oh, of course, it's always mixed bag of good and bad, because it's hardly anything which is bad or good from all perspectives. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that the human is more in its mind and, I guess, soul, but that's I guess a topic for another conversation. But other than body, because our body is flawed, but our mind is pure. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And yeah, as you mentioned, Elon Musk, he's working on this Neuralink basically to improve the bandwidth between the Elon Musk. He's working on the Neuralink to improve the bandwidth between a human and a computer. So it's all. I think it's all movement in that direction. So we'll see. We'll see.
I just know, I feel like a lot of people would, I mean, just the very imagery of it, of people living in little tiny, would just, some people would just kind of inherently define that as dystopian. I think just through the mental imagery of what it conjures, but, if we aren't even seeing that, if we're mentally, well, and, this question itself is very much brought up in the Matrix with, oh gosh, what's his name? The rat, Cypher.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, plug me. I don't care. He eats the steak and he says, I don't care if it's real because it makes my mind happy. And
exactly.
Is he? I mean, obviously he's wrong. He's wrong for what he did for selling out his people, but is he wrong in his argument? I don't think anyone can say yes.
Sure. Yeah. Plus, what you're saying, yeah, you say it looks bad. Obviously, when we see all these cells and the people are there, like in some kind of liquid or whatever to preserve their flawed bodies from rotting. Of course, it looks bad, but the good thing is nobody sees that. So,
true. And you could argue that it's no worse than what a lot of people live in today, if not better.